Welcome back to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Amber Duke. Bono went on Joe Rogan to talk about DOGE and USAID, repeating a mainstream claim that 300,000 people have died as a result of spending cuts. But Rogan pushed back. Let's take a look.
Just recent report. It's not proven, but the surveillance enough suggests 300,000 people have already died from just this cut off, this hard cut of USAID. So there's food rotting in boats, in warehouses. There is this will fuck you off. You will not be happy. No American will. But there is, I think it's 50,000 tons of food that are stored in Djibouti, South Africa, Dubai, and wait for it, Houston, Texas. And that is rotting rather than going to Gaza, rather than going to Sudan, because the people who know the codes or for the warehouse are fired. They're gone. And so this, I don't know, what do you think? What is that? That's not America, is it?
Well, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Right. This is the problem. The problem is, for sure, there have been a lot of organizations that do tremendous good all throughout the world. Also, for sure, it was a money laundering operation. For sure, there was no oversight. For sure, billions of dollars are missing. In fact, trillions that are unaccounted for, that were sent off into various, they don't even know where because there's no receipts.
So I'm glad Joe Rogan pushed back on that. And look, I don't know exactly what goes into the statistic or how it was calculated. It might very well be the case that there are deaths as a result of some change in aid policy. But we can always give more. Is it every starving person somewhere in the world is America's responsibility that we didn't give more, we didn't take care of them, we didn't do everything we could for them? Doesn't that obligates us to be involved all over the globe at all times? And I don't think it is fair to lay deaths on our doorsteps for that. I mean, this is American tax dollars being taken from them, spent on all of these causes. It's perfectly valid to critique, as was done there, maybe sudden cuts or not planning out. No one wants food to go to waste, food to be left in warehouses. We shouldn't have that. But it is not, in my view, and I don't think in your view either, the fundamental responsibility of the American government to provide this kind of relief all over the globe. Charitable organizations can do this. Charitable Americans in their private capacity. There are great organizations that do a lot with aid, and there can be a role for the U.S., but it's not. You can't just say we're finally, for a moment, trying to get serious about our spending, and yeah, you tried to get serious about spending, you killed 500,000 people. Good job. It's just not fair.
It's emotional blackmail.
Yes.
And what's the limiting principle? I mean, to your point, if America doesn't provide aid in some specific circumstance, and then they're directly responsible for the death under Bono's principle, then how many more people should we be feeding, right? Like what we were doing even before the USAID cuts was not sufficient because there were people dying of starvation. That's a fact of the world.
Yes.
That's not sustainable. It's not what's best for the American people. And you hear stories, I think, a lot of times these targeted aid programs result in places not building self-sufficiency. Mm-hmm. And in the long term, it's actually not great for them. I mean, you hear stories of people who have done missions in Africa. They build a well for the village, and they come back the next day, and the well has been stripped, and they sold the bricks for, random stuff.
Well, that came up he was talking about examples of places to send aid. Gaza is a very difficult situation because they're starving, being killed, families, women, children, etc. And we just had a new aid policy for how to get aid to those people because the one being done by the UN kept having Hamas taking the aid or charging the people for it. These people were surprised that the aid we brought in, it doesn't come with any strings attached. This is like a very real concern. You can't just hand wave this away and say, oh, it's all being done perfectly. And Bono, to his credit, has also spoken previously to the importance of just having markets and development as the number one way to lift people out of poverty. So I was a little surprised to hear him go so hard in terms of the aid, because I've heard him speak before on how, like, no, you really want to help out the third world, allow them to build stuff for us and don't depend on it. Exactly, establish those kinds of market situations that require you to bring down the political corruption in the country, and because exactly that, if everything's going to get looted or you have to give everything to some local warlord in order to get your business running, that's the trap by which you can't escape poverty. But it has more to do with institutions and trade than it does, just delivering crates of stuff all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, it's like, is that even worth American taxpayer dollars and time? Like, some places just aren't going to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the reality of living in like a kind of a brutal world, sadly. I mean, it'd be great to help everybody.
Well,
but I'm not naive,
if you have that
right?
view, help everybody, but do you help everybody with other people's tax dollars?
And
let's put it to a vote. The American people don't want to do that.
And will they help themselves, ultimately, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw the folly of this with the attempts at nation building and democracy building in the Middle East.
Of course.
And it ended horrifically, and a lot of those places are even worse off than they were before we tried to get involved.
Now, I would like, programs cut smartly, not spontaneously, and also not randomly pulled back and then reinstated again 5 months later because they didn't actually cut the program or rescind the funding. Yes, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm not pretending that there's no legitimate criticisms of the way it was done. And some things we might determine are in our national interest, that this is a program of aid for some reason. Explain it to the American people. This is the rationale behind it. And maybe the American people will be in support of it. But broadly speaking, the Americans, people want taxpayer dollars. They want to be taxed less. They want to be regulated less. And if we are spending out money, they're worried about, they want it spent at home. They want to spend it in their own communities, that kind of thing. They don't see the benefit to so many of these programs abroad. And if it's important, explain it to people, and maybe people will say, okay. I mean, there was support for helping Ukraine to some level initially when they got invaded by Russia, but then the American people, who are wiser about foreign policy than our elected leaders, eventually started thinking, well, what's the end game here? Where does this end? You're saying we're just going to give them an unlimited amount of funding, but we know they can't win this war. They're slowly losing this war. Everyone in this country is going to get eventually conquered. What's the plan? And then you saw it shifting in the public approval. But initially it was like, oh, this is an emergency. They're being attacked by an evil country. We will offer something to support them. That was popular, but the American people are rational about how long that goes on for, far more than our elected leaders.
We're also the most charitable, generous people in the world with our private resources. Funny story, I was at a concert at Wolf Trap over the weekend, and the concert opened with like quick news clips from like every year over the past 30 years, and one of them was of Elon Musk, and of course the whole crowd started booing because we're in Vienna, Virginia, and I'm sure there were a lot of federal employees in the audience. Yes. But it was so funny to me because I look around and I see at every single stairwell in like the upper section of the concert venue, down below, there's probably like 200 just ushers showing people where their seats are in Wolf Trap. And I'm like, damn, y'all could really use some cuts. Like, look, I think it's lovely. I think it's lovely that there's, a jobs program for elderly people who like the arts, but like, come on.
Well, government bloat and inefficiency, it is not unique to government, I will say. Large private organizations often
Wolf
have
Trap is not private. That's the thing. It's actually a publicly owned venue. So these are federal employees because it's part of the Park Service.
Oh, okay, okay. I missed that. I get it. Yes, well, it's nice of them to. Are then they're compensated too? They're.
Oh no, they're employees. They. I was sitting there like,
we're not
this is not the best use of my taxpayer dollars. We could have half as many ushers and things would be much more efficient.
Oh,
I think I had my ticket checked like at least 5 times after I had already entered the venue. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Take up crocheting.
We've got a long way we can go until there's been too much government.
Right?
Cut.
Like when they were
never gonna run.
I was thinking about how many people were crying about supposed cuts to the National Park Service and just looking around this concert venue like, no, there have not been enough.
Oh my God. Thank you for that information, and thanks for watching Free Media this week. We'll have more for you soon.